Introduction to Meditation, Session 7, on March 2nd, 2017, Dalhousie University, Room B400. And today's topic is conscious change. This is, as I said, the 7th session, and the first 5 were primarily dealing with information, providing information from what the ancients had to say about meditation and reality. And in session 2, we looked at Western scientific aspects of what the brain and body systems were doing. And then in session 3, we investigated relaxation and realized it was a combination of 2 separate nervous systems working in harmony. And in session 4, we looked at brain lateralization and the importance of having a healthy, full functioning brain. We went then into frequencies of the brain in session 5, and one of the interesting facts that came out of that was how busy, how active the brain was in our deepest sleep states. And then last week we looked at the 3 realms, the conscious realm, the unconscious realm, and something that's more like the sea of consciousness that people live in. We all share a common reality. Well, today it's going to be on conscious change, and we'll cover conscious awareness, and I'm matching consciousness with awareness. I am aware of being here. And some of the things that are involved with being conscious and aware is something called the observation effect. There is a measurement problem because every time you look at something, you tend to change it. It creates this well-known, well-documented problem in science. And one of the newest devices that are being created, something called a quantum computer, and they can start to execute a program, but they can't look at it while it's executing. They can only look at the results. If they look at it while it's functioning, they'll change it. We'll also be looking into the subconscious as the actor. So our conscious mind is aware and our subconscious acts. And if you think about it, just about everything we do, we don't know how to do. We don't know how to digest food. We don't know how to grow. We don't know how to heal a wound, but the subconscious does. The trillions and trillions and hundreds of trillions of cells are all working in harmony to create us. So your subconscious has the ability to respond. We have the ability to observe. We'll be looking at some examples of how the conscious and subconscious work together to effect healing. We won't go into them in great detail, but most of you probably have either had or heard of things like touch therapies. The thing I'm very interested in is something called self-adjustment. The body is constantly self-adjusting, and there is the secret, there's the key. If you can enhance the body's ability to self-adjust, you might feel better and be healthier. There's something that has been well documented called the placebo effect, and it is related to the observation effect. In research, quite often we will go out of our way to eliminate the observation effect or the placebo effect. We won't tell the respondent what the purpose of the survey is, because that might bias the results. But something interesting has happened in the last few decades. Researchers have turned their attitude around about the placebo effect. It's not necessarily something bad. In fact, it could be the mechanism that drives the subconscious to effect healing. So when you give someone a sugar pill and you tell them it's a cure for cancer and they get better, maybe there's something going on there. So we'll take a peek at that. But to save time, we're going to go right into our guided meditation today. And the guided meditation has been, for the last 2 sessions, a kinesthetic shadow exercise. So you follow me. We're doing the full brain movements, a protocol that I'm working on to help people re-educate their body. Or actually, we're working on populating the neural pathways. If you think about it, you can do something because you have the neural pathways to do it. When you can't do something, you don't have those circuits in place. Okay, so we'll be working with level 1, difficulty level 1, and just using the arms. Our feet will be in position 1 of 3, which is feet shoulder width apart and somewhat parallel. Today, I want to focus on balancing in position 1 and something called the bubbling springs. But at this point, I'll just remind everyone that what makes these movements Qigong and different from any other type of exercise you might do are the qualities that you endow in them. The movements are soft and slow. And you might want to think of the softest thing you've ever worked with, the most delicate thing, and then triple it. So soft and gentle. Slow, because, well, you could also think that if you do something slowly, you're not going to hurt yourself. So slow and soft. Accuracy is very important. So you want to do the movements accurately. The body's accurate, so our movements should reflect that. We're actually looking for the power positions, and they are in specific locations. So you have to be accurate to be in the most powerful alignment. And the third and final component is attentive. You need to be cognitive of what you're doing. You need to be aware of what you are doing, and that is what energizes these movements. If you do these movements without attention, they will not have the same impact, and they won't be Qigong. A few things to watch out for. When we extend the arms, please do not extend them into the hyperextension position. As you can see on this graph, you want the palm to be level with the elbow and maybe even slightly above it, so there's a little bit of a arch the other way. Here's your bubbling spring point. It's located just above the center of the foot. Your weight will fall in and slightly behind that point. So when you're balancing, you can play with this a bit. You can find your balance point using both feet, standing parallel, and just relax and let your weight fall into the bubbling spring. You'll recognize it because this will be the position where you feel like you're suspended, like a puppet. I want to introduce the concept of body planes. So you could divide the body up into planes, and notice that there's 3 in this graph. There's a vertical plane, and there is a ear to ear. You could call it a horizontal alignment, but it's a plane that runs through your body sideways. And then there's a plane that runs through your body from the front to the back. And finally, there's a plane that it can move around, but a good place to start is to think of it somewhere around or just below your belly button, and it's like a table that cuts through your whole cross section of the body. So these are the 3 planes that we'll be working with the arms. So each of the 3 movements refer to or work with one of these 3 planes. And remember that when we do the arm movements, we'll do one arm at a time unilaterally. So we'll do the right arm, then we'll do the left. Then we'll do a balanced bilateral movement where we do both arms simultaneously. And then here's where the magic happens. We do both arms, but we do them mirrored. So one arm is doing the exact opposite of the other, and this is what forces the two brains to sync up. As I mentioned in the beginning, I substituted or combined the word awareness with consciousness, so they go together. And when I went online and did a search, I selected the word awareness for today, and it came up with a definition: awareness being knowledge of something. You're aware of something. It also implies an understanding of a situation or a subject. And here's the part I like: at the present time, based on what you know, based on the information available. This implies that you can change your awareness of something, that this is a changing thing. As you get more information, you become more aware, more knowledgeable about whatever it is you're observing. So we introduced the idea of the conscious mind being a relatively small percentage of you. I like to think of the fact that the conscious mind really doesn't do anything. It's aware of a lot, or can be, but it's the subconscious mind, the part that we don't normally have control over, and quite often, most of the time, are not aware of. That's the part of you that does all the work. So the conscious mind is the observer, and the subconscious mind is the doer. I like to think of the conscious mind as being the eyes and ears of the subconscious. When we're talking about conscious change, I tried to think of what would be a good way of presenting this, and all I could come up with were a bunch of words associated with always. So I have a list of things that are always present when the change is conscious. When you are consciously attending to something, these things always happen. And one of the things I really think is amazing is that conscious change is always positive. And what I mean by that is that you will never, ever consciously harm yourself. You will, if you are aware of something, you'll always want it to move towards the thing that is most advantageous. In order to do something to harm yourself on a repetitive basis, such as an addiction or whatever, you have to go unconscious. So if you know anyone, or if you have been in a position where you've been doing something that has not been beneficial, if you look back, you realize that you weren't really conscious. You kind of went unconscious while you did it. I could go on about this, but the main point here is that when you attend to something and are conscious of it, you'll select the better path. Conscious change is always consistent. It's consistent. It's never one day you go to the left and the next day you go to the right. And if you think back over the time when there was something that you needed to adjust or change in your life, years later when you went back to it, it was still there. It was consistent. This is what you have to do. A nice part of conscious change is that it's persistent. Once you make it, it's done. You don't have to go back and redo it and redo it. Once you make a truly fully conscious change, it's there forever. That's the good news. The bad news is that if you have installed a unconscious, unresourceful state of mind, it's also there forever. So the subconscious will continue to persist in executing or conveying that unresourceful pattern. An example might be a childhood fear that to this day is still right there. So those kinds of things need to be looked into, and we'll use the timeline as one way of addressing things in your past that are not really of value, or in some way providing unresourceful behavior. Another aspect of conscious change is that it really is self-evident. When you really look at something, it becomes pretty obvious what your next step is. I've always found that, and I think if you talk to people who are involved in this line of work, they'll say The answers are right in front of you all the time. You just have to look. So this aspect of something being self-evident is kind of tricky, because you might be entering into a situation that you're becoming aware of and you will not know how to resolve it. The way to find out how to resolve it and to make the solution really obvious is to really look at it, to really become aware of it. We'll touch on this more later. Related to self-evident is the whole idea of the conscious change being self-adjusting. You really don't have to enter into it with a rule book or with a bunch of ideas of how you're going to do this. Once you immerse yourself in the change, it will be self-aligning and self-adjusting. I use the examples of molecules in a tub of water. They don't have an instruction manual on how to balance. They respond to each other and self-adjust. I like to think of the universe as being one big self-adjusting mobile. Everything is responding to everything in an instantaneous and harmonious way. Conscious change is always about you. It's self-directed. You can become conscious of something, but it doesn't mean that anyone else will change. So when you're looking into aspects of your own life, don't be surprised if you change and nobody else does. This is just about you, and it's okay to have this be all about you, because that's really all it can be about. We can't think for someone else. We can't act for someone else. So this becomes, again, a tricky situation in a relationship where one person becomes aware and begins to change and the other person doesn't. I'm sure we've all been in that situation. So there's nothing really you can do, but you cannot make the other person aware. You can help them, but it's their job to become conscious. The final little point I wanted to bring up was the idea of balance. When you enter into a change, it's going to create an imbalance. That is the nature of change, and we're going to address that in more detail in the next session, dealing with chaos and reorganization. But initially, all change upsets the mobile. The mobile starts wiggling, the tub of water starts splashing around, but eventually it self-balances. So you don't really have to do anything in particular other than holding steady to your belief in yourself and keeping real conscious, really aware. Here's some tips that I've been looking at over the years. I would say it's easily coming up to 20 years, if not longer, that I've been investigating some of these things. And these are not my personal inventions here. These are sourced from all kinds of different people working on this whole area of conscious awareness and healing. As we talked about initially at the very beginning of the sessions, we have these frames that we store in our memory. Each frame can contain any of the 6 modes of thinking. And there are 18 different. There are 6 modes of thinking from the past, 6 from the present, and 6 from the future. They can be combined as well. So just when you pull up something from the past, you pull up a picture of the past, and you can see yourself at the Christmas dinner with the family. The act of bringing it into the present changes it. And so an experience can be a blending. You could begin to recall something such as your Christmas dinner from the past and think about future Christmas dinners. There you go. I've already mentioned the observation effect, but I'll just mention it briefly here, that the key is to pay attention. Become aware of what you're thinking and what you're feeling. Just listen to yourself and listen to what is around you. The act of observing creates the change. When you observe something, there's 2 ways you can observe something, be it a memory or something you're experiencing or something you're thinking of in the future, you can be associated or bonded to it. When you're associated to a thought, you are as close to it as you can be. You feel what is going on in that particular situation. It's kind of like if you're really connected and associated to another person. If they're feeling sad, you'll feel sad. Now, using that analogy, if you're not that connected to a person, you're disassociated from them. If they feel sad, well, you might not feel sad. You'll probably keep going on your way because you're not that associated with them. So when you observe something and you have a thought, if it's a positive thought, if it's a resourceful thought, you might want to associate with that and connect to it. If it's not that resourceful a thought and it creates some difficulty in your life, you have the power to just disassociate and disconnect. And here's the reason why. Because everything that you observe has an aspect of it that is real. Everything that you hear, see, touch, smell, feel is real. However, not everything is true. So the saying goes something like this: whether you're right or wrong, if you believe it, it will be true for you. And we've used examples in the past of people who have irrational phobias about something. Well, for them, that phobia is real, but it's not true. It's not actually there. You might see a speck on the floor, and that might frighten you because you're afraid of small specks. Well, that's kind of irrational, but there are people who are. And you have to respect that, because for them, that speck is danger. It's irrational, but that doesn't matter, does it? They believe that it's dangerous, and therefore, that's their truth. So not everything is true. And in session 1, we came up with an example of how the ancients separated the truth from what was not true. And I won't go into that now, but there are some nice steps that you can go through. Bottom line is that if you are observing something and it's not true, it's not resourceful, you have the power to detach. And of course, the reverse is true. If something you're observing is resourceful and you see that for you it's true, you can bond to that and attach to it. The bottom line is that we're again talking about this feedback loop type of arrangement. Whatever you focus on generates this feedback, generates this loop, and becomes more intense. So the act of observing makes a connection between the observer and what is being observed, and the object, what is being observed. A very famous person is credited with this quote: "You don't know what you don't know." So when you're embarking on a change, you really don't know what the outcome is going to be, and you don't know what the change is going to be. You have to be able to just accept the fact that you don't know, and trust that the subconscious only wants to take you to a better location, that the change will always be more resourceful than the previous state. Not knowing what that state will be or that situation will be can cause some anxiety. So here's a few tips. If you always want to be okay about yourself, do you know somebody who's always okay? Yeah, it kind of makes you upset, doesn't it? Because it'd be nice to be like that person. Well, you can be that person. You can always be okay. And here's a few tips. The first part of being okay all the time is just knowing what state you're in. Just asking yourself the question, how do I feel? Do I feel okay? Well, of course, if you feel okay and everything's fine, there's nothing else to do. You're already okay. Go about your business. But if the answer comes back, no, I'm not okay. And it really doesn't matter whether it's something in the past, the present, or future that you're looking at. It doesn't matter. If you're not okay, then you got a little bit more work to do. Because what that means is that there's something you're observing that you're resisting. You're resisting something that you're observing doesn't quite jive for you, and it creates pain, some kind of suffering, some kind of anxiety. So this resistance is also an indicator that you're not okay. So if you're not sure if you're okay, just ask yourself, am I experiencing some resistance here? Am I having some anxiety, some stress, some pain? The next thing you can do, once you've identified the fact that you are resisting something, is just accept it and say, look, I can't change this. I'm going to accept the outcome. I'm okay with the fact that I am resisting this. And you can go out about your business. You're done. You're finished. You've accepted it. And you come back to being okay, even though you are resisting something. An example there might be a friend of yours might be doing something that makes you upset. Well, maybe you can just accept that that's what they do and go on with your life. Now, the opposite is true. What if you can't accept what that friend is doing or that situation is creating for you? You're still not okay. You're still upset. You can't be okay about your decision, right? The outcome isn't something that you can accept. At that point, you're kind of at the end of the loop here. You've identified that you're not okay. You've identified the resistance. You can't accept it, and you're still upset, or you have some dissonance about it. The best thing to do there is absolutely nothing. When you're in that state, or at least for me, when I'm in that state, making a decision when I can't accept the outcome is problematic. Let me give you an example. Most people take airplane flights. Some people are terrified of flying airplanes. One reason that they are terrified of getting in an airplane is they cannot accept the possibility that the airplane might fall from the sky. Now, you would say, well, the chances of that are very slim. I am willing to accept that. So, like me, you will fly to a vacation spot and enjoy it and come back. But there are people who cannot accept it. So, when you're in that situation where you are totally resisting it, the best thing to do is to meditate in some way, avoid making any decision. Don't do anything. And that will allow some time, you know the expression sleep on it, that will buy some time for you to reach a point where the solution for this will be self-evident. So I'm going to go on more about doing nothing here because it implies that you just take your mind off it. No, what I'm saying here is that you still stay focused on it, but you don't act. You do not do any conscious action, and inevitably, if you stay focused on what the issue is, it will become pretty obvious what your decision has to be. The only way people can stay, say, using the example of a unresourceful relationship, one where there's some codependency going on, is if one or both of the people in the relationship go unconscious and ignore the issue. And again, when in the next session, I'm going to spend a little bit more time on something I call approaching the threshold of change. And this is a special situation. So if you get all the way down to the bottom of this list, you're approaching a threshold. You're approaching a change point. And it's kind of a special moment. Bottom line is that it's a self-healing mechanism. It's an interaction of your conscious mind with your subconscious and the world around you that creates the change. You yourself do not have to do the change. I like to think of the example of when you eat an apple, you don't know how to digest it, but you trust that when you eat it, it will digest properly 99.9% of the time. So that's an introduction to conscious change. It's a huge topic, so I didn't really want to dig in too deep into any particular aspect, but I want you to give you the trust and the belief that it's a good route to go. Being aware of whatever it is you have to change is the first step. Accepting it, the outcome of acting, is, of course, the next step. So we're going to do our traditional meditation now. And in this setting, what I'd like you to just be aware of the body trying to adjust. When you're sitting there perfectly still, doing your meditation, you might notice that the body wants to change, it wants to do something. Now, what you're going to do is absolutely nothing. When you sense this desire for your body to, well, let me use this real simple example. You might feel like scratching your nose. Your nose might get extremely itchy. And what do? Absolutely nothing. And watch what happens. So when you feel an urge to move or do something, just stay calm, continue with your meditation, and watch the body self-adjust for you. Okay? Well, that's it for today's session on conscious change. Next session will be on chaos and reorganization, one of my favorite. And this is actually the climax. This is actually the goal, to be able to go through the chaos and reorganize as a more resourceful individual. So on March 9th, we'll go into that. And I'd just like to thank you for watching this video and participating in the sessions. Thank you.